With all apologies to the fine folks at TNT, it's the Braves that know drama. 4 straight comeback wins with Ozzie Albies' walk-off 3-run home run capping a sweep of the Mets. In each of those games versus the NL East rival, Atlanta trailed by 3 runs. Welcome into BPTV, Cory McCartney along with Grant McAuley. And Grant, this stretch, this just completed series in this offense, it can only be defined as one thing: BANANAS.
Yeah, that's one way to describe it, most certainly. And they've also shown that, while we might have been sitting here a week or so ago wondering, is the Atlanta offense going to kind of sputter to a stop heading into the summer? They're having trouble scoring against the Oakland Athletics. What's wrong with this team? They were able to course correct rather quickly, including winning a series over the weekend against the Arizona Diamondbacks. That was capped off by the Eddie Rosario grand slam to win that game, and then 3 consecutive comebacks to kind of rip the heart out of the Mets, at least here early. Nobody down here is going to be declaring the NL East anything close to over with nearly 100 games left to play, but the Braves made a serious statement in this series by coming back against the Mets, lining up the best pitchers that they could throw at this particular time, and beating a couple of Hall of Famers in the process, or at least winning on days a couple of Hall of Famers were throwing against them. And this offense, it was very exciting to see the style in which they did it, continuing to chip away at that lead in the finale, all culminated with an extra inning walk-off from Ozzie Albies. There were a lot of things to enjoy if you were Braves fans, and lots to unpack here on Battery Power.
Yeah, and there's some historical improbability out of what we just saw. It's the first time the Braves have won 3 straight, trailing by at least 3 runs since 1900. And this season, they were 2-16 in those games. And considering the season finale, the Mets had won 122 straight games when leading after 8 innings. It all has the Braves a season-high 14 games above 500. And as you mentioned it, a week after we were talking about a sluggish finish to the month of May, there's been nobody better so far in the early goings of June. The Braves lead the majors in F4, WRC plus, home runs, average, OBP slugging. Grant, at this moment in time, there's a lot going on well offensively, and it's hard to find anything that's not going well.
No, and I know we're going to talk about some of the individual contributors to all of this, but when you think about the season that Ronald Acuna Jr. is putting together at the top of that order, then a 1-2 punch of Matt Olson and Austin Riley from the left side and right side, respectively. You know the power potential that they have. Then you get into the middle of the order. Hey, Sean Murphy's having a career year. Travis d'Arnaud is back and swinging the bat well. Eddie Rosario's looking good. Ozzie Albies is swinging the bat and doing his power thing again this year. Marcell Ozuna's figured stuff out. Orlando Arcia comes through in the clutch time and again. And then all of a sudden, Michael Harris looks like he is coming out of his slump to start the season as well. You go 1 through 9, Cory. I challenge really any other club to identify a lineup that could be as deep and as powerful and as sudden as the Atlanta Braves can be. And they showed it off in this series.
Yeah, and to put a focus on one of the major reasons why of late, Austin Riley has had 4 straight multi-hit games, tying a career high, 14 of those in his last 31 games, one off the MLB to lead in that span. In the last 19, he's hitting .343 with a .950 OPS, 11 extra base hits. He's 7th in F4 in the NL that span, 6th in WRC plus. In a season when the exit velo, barrel rate, hard hit rate, etc., they were all a tick below last season. Looks like he got his groove back.
Yeah, it certainly does. And when I talked to Austin a few weeks ago, he felt like he had identified the problem that he had. And the big thing he told me was, I'm kind of lunging, I'm diving out over the plate. It's causing me to roll over. I'm getting busted and jammed inside. I'm never grounded into this many double plays. Those were the things we were talking about not that long ago. Then, through some very diligent work with the Braves hitting coaches, with his offseason hitting coach, Mike Brumley, and of course, Chipper Jones is always there to maybe throw in a couple of words if you need him and you're an Atlanta Braves hitter trying to figure things out. That certainly doesn't hurt, but it's Austin Riley's hard work and dedication to this, which has been a big part of what's made him successful throughout his pro career to get him back to the player that we expect him to be. Somebody that can hit at the minimum a 275, maybe higher, with 35 to 45 homer power, I believe. I think this guy could lead the National League in home runs one of these days, and we'll see if that comes true this year. If he gets on maybe a home run binge, it's going to take one to get him back into it after that slow start. But we're seeing not just home runs, but the overall approach, the overall execution, and the things that we expected to see from Austin Riley showing up night after night at this point. And he is just continuing to show that this is a cornerstone player for the Braves, and they needed him to get kind of back to the normal that we've seen the last couple of years as he established himself as one of the best third basemen in the game.
Well, Riley not alone in getting into a groove. Orlando Arcia, who hit the game-tying homer against the Mets on Thursday, has been a top 25 player in the NL based on F4 over the past 30 days, an F4 that's equal to the guy he's replacing in Dansby Swanson. Arcia is second among NL shortstops in WRC plus in that span. If not for those 21 games he missed with a microfracture in his left wrist, we'd be talking about a guy with a qualified average of 326 that would be fourth best in baseball and one of the game's most productive shortstops. Remember back when everyone thought that the Braves should have cashed in on that big shortstop market? There may not be a more unbelievable story on this roster right now than what we're seeing being played out by Orlando Arcia.
Now, it's pretty incredible over the first few months. And you mentioned, I mean, you think about a wrist injury, that could be something that lingered or became a problem throughout the course of the season. It could certainly have caused him to miss a lot more than 3 weeks worth of games, but Orlando got back very quickly. I guess fortunate in the kind of break that it was, but also, his overall dedication and wanting to jump back in. No rehab assignment for this guy either. He was ready to get back in there. And yeah, if you give him back that 3 weeks to just show the kind of production that he has over the first 2 months of the season, I think we're talking about somebody that's got an all-star case. We're certainly talking about somebody that has shown the Braves no drop-off from what they got at shortstop last year and really the last few years with Dansby. Defensively, it's looked good. The arm has played up much bigger than I thought that it would in terms of being a real difference maker, because it just looks like the Braves have these chances to turn double plays that I really didn't think that they might turn, because he's the man at second base getting that throw off. So it's been all phases, I feel like, with Orlando Arcia, including, you can't really coach it, but he just has this knack for coming through in times in which the Braves need him, and he's been one of the Braves' best clutch hitters this year. That certainly continues to make a case, or all adds up to something good. And Orlando Arcia has been a whole lot of something good this year for the Braves. And keeping in mind the big crazy shortstop market with $177 million for Dansby kind of being the low mark for what some of these guys got, Orlando Arcia is going to be around for 3 years at about $7 million. I think that might be just a masterstroke by Alex Anthopoulos when it's all said and done. Even if he's not your starting shortstop in a year or two, this is a guy that you want around, and he's showing that he's capable of being that starting shortstop.
Well, think about how far down the line Orlando Arcia was on everyone's wish list over the winter. You think about, obviously, the return of Dansby Swanson. You think about, Trey Turner, all the guys that were on the market, and then obviously, Vaughn Grissom, Braden Shoemaker, and the push that he had made in the spring. This wasn't the guy that anyone wanted to be in this position, but it's just hard to quantify what he's been able to do in terms of taking advantage of this opportunity he's been given.
No doubt about it. And I know I can go back through my tweets and tell you, I'm just confused as to what Vaughn Grissom needed to show in the spring, because just from the eye test, it looked fine. And it just felt like, just the way that things were talked about over the course of the winter, that, well, Vaughn's going to get his opportunity. You kind of started to understand, all right, well, if we've got a young guy that we might want to give this job to, maybe that's why you're not going to, break the bank for Dansby Swanson or one of those other shortstops for that matter. But then it's Orlando Arcia, who just kind of quietly comes in. He wasn't even looking altogether that hot early in the spring, which is why I guess we should probably put spring training numbers off to the side and let the evaluations that the team does stand for something, because they got this one right. They really did. And it doesn't mean that Vaughn Grissom doesn't have a story to tell in an Atlanta Braves uniform. I think that he still could, but Orlando Arcia has proved a lot of doubters, myself included, wrong. I love having him on the club. I just didn't feel like there was a scenario where him being the starting shortstop was plan A for this club. But sometimes your best laid plans don't lead you anywhere. And you manage to, just by going out and making some nice moves and by adding that depth, find something that maybe surprises everybody. But Orlando, after the Brewers kind of gave up on him and traded him over to Atlanta, he made some swing changes. The Braves believed in those. They believed that he could be an everyday player, and he is rewarding that belief by the Braves with a very, very solid 2023 season, with a lot of baseball left to be played and a lot more story to tell.
Well, despite the wins, the Mets series wasn't all roses. Spencer Strider lasted just 4 innings in Thursday's season finale, giving up 8 runs, including a pair of home runs. He's had 7 starts in which he's lasted fewer than 5 innings. 3 of them have come against the Mets. In 5 starts against New York, he has a 7.59 ERA with 3 home runs and a 2.97 average against, all the most of any team he's seen more than twice. Thursday, the Mets had 19 fouls on the 48 swings against Strider. The last time they saw him, which was May 1st, he gave up 4 runs in 5 innings. They had 26 fouls on 54 swings. Those are rates of 39 and 48% respectively. Clearly, they have a game plan against him. And in his early goings, and we've seen Strider be a Rookie of the Year runner-up. He's been an NL Cy Young contender this far into this season. He was going to get to that point where someone was going to force him to make some big adjustments. It looks like the Mets are that team. And in the meantime, I think you have to wonder, does Strider have a Mets problem?
Yeah, well, or the Mets just kind of the kryptonite for the style in which he pitches because of the style in which they grind out at bats, foul off pitches. I'm not saying they're all up there looking to walk, but they're patient enough by and large through this lineup to give him problems and run up that pitch count. And when he's made mistakes, the Mets have found a way to capitalize on those with some long balls, which is not something that we see altogether too often. A lot of times with a power pitcher, you're supplying that power. You're going to run into some home runs. That's just kind of part and parcel to the style of pitcher that he is. But the Mets, for whatever reason, and maybe it's just the collection of hitters that they have and the style in which they play ball and the style in which they go after in approach against Spencer Strider just seems to work a whole lot better than a lot of other teams. So I don't know what it all means and how long this story will play out this way. Sometimes it does take an adjustment and a guy's able to figure something out and reverse his fortunes. But for Spencer, 8 earned runs in 4 innings, that was certainly going to blow up the head-to-head ERA against the New York Mets. But we've seen this be problematic for him against this club before. And it wasn't just weird batted ball luck in last night's game. I know a lot of Mets fans had a lot of fun at Spencer's expense the first time that this happened, but the Mets have made a trend out of this. And for Strider, he's going to be looking to make his adjustments and figure out what he can, not just against the New York Mets, but to make sure he gets himself on track. And maybe there's something that he's going to figure out that's going to allow him to have a little bit less of that foul ball problem, because it does drive up his pitch count. As a strikeout pitcher, he said this time and again, I'm going to throw a lot of pitches because it typically takes that to strike guys out. I'm not necessarily trying to strike everyone out, but it is the style in which he pitches. And I think it's a style that a lot of people have enjoyed because he has piled up strikeouts at a rate that really no other Braves pitcher has ever done it. But there are always adjustments to be made to get that little bit better. And I think Spencer Strider has the mentality to figure that out.
Well, he said many times it takes at least 3 pitches per batter if he's going to get those strikeouts. But eventually, he knew someone was going to present a challenge to him. So much as some comes so easy for him since he moved to the rotation. It looks like the Mets are going to be the team that provides that big challenge for him. Before we move on from the Mets series, I did want to mention that Thursday's win was number 580 for Braves manager Brian Snitker. That puts him past George Stallings for 3rd in franchise history. He trails only Frank Seeley with 1,004 wins and Bobby Cox at 2,149. It's a long way to break into that top 2, but Grant, congrats on Snit for a monumental win in his career.
Yeah, it speaks to, what the Braves have built here over the last now going into 6 seasons. I mean, the work started before that in rebuilding this club and blowing everything up. And Snit came in and felt like, well, he may just be here to keep the seat warm until they figure out what direction they want to go with the team in general, not just at the manager seat, but they were trying to figure a lot out. But he came in with, I feel like, just the right mentality, just the right approach, and the right, and say what you want. The ability to manage the people as much as you're managing the players is a huge aspect of being successful in building the kind of culture that the Braves have built. And that, I think, is something that a team like the Mets is kind of looking for. And I'm not just taking a swing at Buck Showalter because it goes beyond him, but what the Braves have been able to do was not built overnight. It was not built in free agency. It was not built on a couple of trades and just hoping that everybody gels. The Braves have something truly special, and I do think that the steady hand of Brian Snitker is something that has helped out. That coaching staff brings an awful lot to that club, and you have a whole bunch of guys that play together with accountability and enjoy being part of what the Braves are doing, and players enjoy playing in Atlanta. That certainly helps. But Brian Snitker, I think, if you talk to any player, the tone that is set from the top down for the Braves is a big part of their success. I think it goes beyond, well, which relief pitcher should we have used this night or that night? That's a whole separate discussion. No manager's going to get it right every single time, but Snit has brought a lot to this Braves club in the form of leadership and in the form of setting a tone and an expectation for this team that not only can they win, but they will win. And if they have opportunities, they're going to find a way to hang around. And if you let them hang around as an opposing team, just to add on to that, they may find a way to beat you. And the Braves showed that off quite a few times in the last 7 days.
Well, as they say, there's no quit with Snit. But the Braves now turn their attention to the Nationals, a team they are 30-11 against since the start of the 2021 season. They've dropped just 2 series against them in that time. Losers of 4 straight, 7-9. The Nationals remain in a bad way, sitting in the NL East cellar. If there's an easy storyline, though, for this series, which begins Friday night at Truist Park, youth is going to be served. 20-year-old AJ Smith-Shawver is going to make his first start against Josiah Gray on Friday. Jared Schuster follows opposite Mackenzie Gore, and then Bryce Elder, the NL's ERA leader and one of just 4 qualified starters at 24 years or younger, goes Sunday against Trevor Williams. Youth going to be everywhere, Grant, for the Braves on the mound in this series.
Yeah, it will be. And for the Nationals, I mean, they've got a pretty good little thing going. Josiah Gray's had a pretty good year. I think Mackenzie Gore is also a guy that they're going to be building around. But yeah, all eyes for the Braves are going to be on AJ Smith-Shawver, who, they just strapped a rocket to his back and sent him right from Rome, Georgia, where he started the year in high A ball, made 3 starts there, 2 in double A, 2 in triple A, and now he's in the major leagues. And what he did in the minors to blaze this trail and, show the Braves something that they felt like they had enough curiosity. They needed to find out if he could help them at the big league level. It's special stuff. We saw it against the Arizona Diamondbacks, 2 1/3 scoreless innings, 1 walk, 3 punch outs, a fastball in the mid 90s, good breaking ball offerings. He can change speeds, and he's pounding the strike zone. And even at 20 years old, talking to him a few days ago, he said, look, I'm just trying to keep it simple. I want to attack hitters. I want to stay in and around the strike zone and just give my team a chance to win. And it seems like that's something that, again, the Braves do a pretty good job of bringing guys in and developing them. And they also have shown that they have no compunction about bringing guys up from the minor leagues to help them out in their rotation. In 2019, it was Michael Soroka and Max Fried. In 2020, it was Ian Anderson. Last year, Kyle Wright really stepped into it. Spencer Strider stepped up big time. And this year, we've seen the story of Bryce Elder. So where might AJ Smith-Shawver figure into this group of pitchers that has become such an integral part of the Braves' success over the past few years? He's going to get a big opportunity, and I believe youngest Braves starter since Julio Teheran in 2011. You don't see too many guys under the age of 21 debuting. There have been a handful the last few years, but since the Braves moved to Atlanta in 1966, I believe it's a dozen pitchers under 21 that have pitched for this club. So AJ Smith-Shawver, at just 20 years old, doesn't turn 21 until November. He has an opportunity to do something at a very young age and help out the Braves in a time in which they really need somebody else to step up to round out this rotation.
I have a theory that back in the old NES days that Alex Anthopoulos never played a game straight through. That he lived within cheat codes because he's just skipping levels all over the place. Now he's got his players doing it as well. Mackenzie Gore, by the way, sensational. The last time he saw the Braves on April 2nd, allowed 1 run with 6 strikeouts, but all weekend long, get to that bullpen, which is last in the NL and F4 and ERA. Atlanta's offense could feast yet again. Another plea, if you haven't already, subscribe to the Battery Power YouTube channel, hit subscribe, turn on the notifications. That's how you'll know each and every time that we drop another episode here on BPTV. Until next time, I'm Cory McCartney. He's Grant McAuley, and we'll see you soon, Braves Country.